Kyle Harrison stood alone in the empty observation room. His eyes moved across the darkness of space. Outside the window, hundreds of alien ships floated in perfect lines. Each ship belonged to a different civilization. Some were huge, the size of small cities. Others were sleek and fast. All of them were here for the same reason. The Galactic Summit happened every 50 years. It was the most important meeting in the galaxy. Leaders from 100 worlds came together to talk about peace, trade, and problems between different species. They made decisions that affected billions of lives across thousands of star systems. Earth had never been invited to even one of these meetings. Kyle had been Earth's representative for 10 years now. His job was simple but frustrating. He watched from the sidelines. He sent reports back home. He tried to make friends with alien diplomats who barely looked at him. Most days he felt invisible. Humans had discovered faster than light travel 40 years ago. It was an accident, really. A scientist named Dr. Helen Crawford had been working on a completely different problem when she stumbled onto the solution. Within a year, the first human ship had jumped beyond the solar system. Within 5 years, humanity had mapped nearby star systems and found out they were not alone. The galaxy was old. Really old. Some civilizations had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had rules, traditions, and ways of doing things that went back further than human recorded history. When Earth sent its first diplomatic ship filled with hope and excitement, the aliens had simply ignored them. Earth tried everything. They offered to share their technology. They proposed trade agreements. They sent cultural ambassadors with art, music, and literature from Earth. They even offered military assistance to civilizations that were having problems with pirates or border disputes. Nothing worked. The galaxy saw humans as children, too young, too inexperienced, too primitive to matter. The established powers had their hierarchy. They had spent centuries building relationships with each other. A newcomer species that had barely left its homeworld did not deserve a seat at the table. Kyle touched the cold window glass. Today's summit was especially important. Two of the galaxy's major powers were close to war. The Vraxian hegemony and the Kelthian Commonwealth had been arguing over 17 star systems for decades. Both sides claimed the systems belonged to them. Both sides had been building up their military forces. If war started, it would be terrible. Millions would die. Entire planets might be destroyed. The economic damage would affect every civilization in the galaxy, and Earth would have absolutely no say in stopping it. A soft beep interrupted his thoughts. Kyle turned to see Patricia Moore's face on his communication device. Patricia had worked with him for 6 years. She was smart, dedicated, and shared his frustration at being ignored by the galaxy. Her expression looked worried. Very worried. Ambassador Harrison, we have a serious problem. The Vraxian delegation just delivered an ultimatum to the Kelthians. They want the Commonwealth to completely withdraw from all disputed systems within 72 hours. If they refuse, the Vraxians will declare war. Kyle felt his heart sink. He had hoped the summit would lead to compromise. Instead, things were getting worse. What is the Galactic Council doing about this? They are calling emergency meetings, trying to get both sides to negotiate. But Kyle, our intelligence reports say the Vraxian fleet is already moving into position. They have over 2,000 warships ready to attack. The Kelthians have matched them. This is really going to happen. Kyle closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this day might come. Earth had prepared for it, but actually facing the decision was different from planning for it. For 40 years, humanity had been working in secret. While the galaxy ignored them, Earth had been busy. Shipyards around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn had been building constantly. Scientists had studied every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Sometimes they bought it. Sometimes they stole it. Sometimes they just figured it out by watching from a distance. Human engineers took what they learned and made it better. They combined Vraxian shield technology with Kelthian power systems. They improved Dralathai weapons designs. They created ships that were faster, tougher, and more advanced than anyone expected from such a young species. And they did it all in silence. The galaxy thought Earth had maybe 100 ships for system defense. They had no idea what humanity had really built. Kyle made his decision. He activated his secure channel to Earth. The signal would take a few minutes to reach home, passing through several encrypted relay stations to avoid detection. When the connection finally established, Admiral Cynthia Grant appeared on his screen. Admiral Grant had been with Earth's Defense Force for 30 years. She had overseen the construction of most of humanity's secret fleet. She was tough, smart, and absolutely committed to protecting Earth and its interests. Kyle took a deep breath before speaking. Admiral Grant, the situation here is critical. The Vraxians and Kelthians are about to start the biggest war this galaxy has seen in centuries. The Council cannot stop them. I am requesting that we proceed with Operation Homecoming. It is time to show the galaxy that Earth exists. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. They both knew what this meant. Once they revealed the fleet, there was no going back. Earth would either earn respect or make enemies of everyone. Maybe both, I understand, Ambassador. The fleet will depart within the hour. We will arrive at your location in 3 hours. Every ship we have is coming. All 1,000 of them. 1,000 warships. Kyle still could barely believe it. Earth had built an entire fleet in secret right under the galaxy's nose. God help us all, Admiral. See you soon. The transmission ended. Kyle turned back to the window. Outside, the alien fleets continued their preparations for war. None of them knew what was coming. None of them expected that the species they had ignored for decades was about to change everything. Kyle thought about all the years of rejection, all the diplomatic messages that went unanswered, all the proposals that were dismissed without even being read. The galaxy had made it clear that humanity did not matter. In 3 hours, that would change. In 3 hours, 1,000 human warships would arrive at the most important diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Uninvited, unannounced, undeniable. For 40 years, Earth had missed every galactic summit. They had been left out of every important decision. They had been treated like children who should be seen and not heard. Now they were going to make the galaxy listen, whether the galaxy wanted to or not. The 3 hours felt like forever. Kyle paced back and forth in Earth's small office on the council station. He watched the diplomatic feeds showing the growing tension between the Vraxians and Kelthians. Their representatives shouted at each other across the meeting chambers. Insults flew back and forth. Ancient grudges were brought up. Each side accused the other of lying and cheating. Meanwhile, both fleets moved into attack positions. Military analysts on the station tracked every ship movement. The numbers were frightening. Over 4,000 warships total, all armed with weapons that could destroy planets. If this turned into actual fighting, the death toll would be measured in millions. Patricia rushed into the office. Her hands shook as she held her tablet. Her face was pale. Ambassador, the station sensors are picking up something strange. Really strange. There are massive energy readings at the edge of the system. The computer says it is detecting multiple jump signatures. A lot of them. Kyle looked at his watch. Right on time. How many signatures? The system is having trouble counting them all. At least 800, maybe more. Kyle, what is happening? Those energy signatures do not match any known fleet patterns. The power levels are incredibly high. Kyle walked to the window. He could not see anything yet, but he knew what was coming. His heart pounded in his chest. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Patricia, I need you to trust me. What you are about to see will shock you. It will shock everyone. But please remember, we are doing this to prevent a war, not start one. She stared at him with confusion. Before she could ask what he meant, the station's alarm systems began to sound. Warning lights flashed throughout the diplomatic quarters. The sensor displays lit up with hundreds of new contacts. The human fleet had arrived. Ships began appearing on the external cameras. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each vessel was painted with the blue and white colors of United Earth. Their hulls were sleek and modern, incorporating design elements from a dozen different alien civilizations but improved with human engineering. The count on the sensors climbed steadily. 800 ships, 900, 950, 1,000 human warships all armed and ready floating in space around the council station. Patricia dropped her tablet. The device clattered on the floor, but she did not notice. Her mouth hung open as she stared at the display screens. How? When? Kyle, where did all these ships come from? I thought Earth only had a small defense force. We have been building them for 40 years. In secret. Every shipyard in the solar system has been working non-stop. We knew the galaxy would not listen to us if we appeared weak, so we made ourselves strong. Strong enough that they have no choice but to listen. All across the council station, similar scenes were playing out. Alien diplomats rushed to their sensor stations. Military officers scrambled to identify the unknown fleet. Panic spread through the command centers as the assembled civilizations realized that a massive armed force had just appeared out of nowhere. The Vraxian and Kelthian fleets both went on high alert. Their weapons powered up, their shields activated, but they did not know who to aim at. The human fleet had positioned itself in a defensive sphere around the station, not threatening anyone specifically, but clearly ready to fight if necessary. Kyle's communicator buzzed urgently. The screen showed Secretary General Drelathi, the ancient alien who led the Galactic Council. Drelathi had been a diplomat for over 200 years. He had seen many crises, but the shock on his face was obvious. Ambassador Harrison, you will explain this immediately. Why has Earth brought a military fleet to a diplomatic summit? This is a violation of every protocol we have. This is an act of aggression. Kyle kept his voice calm and steady. He had practiced this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Secretary General, with respect, Earth has tried to participate in galactic affairs through peaceful means for 40 years. We sent diplomats. We offered aid. We requested dialogue. We were ignored every single time. Meanwhile, 2 of your member civilizations are about to start a war that will kill millions. We will not stand by and watch that happen. You cannot force your way onto the Council with military threats. That is not how civilized species behave. We are not threatening anyone. We are offering help. The Vraxians and Kelthians need someone to step between them, someone strong enough to keep them apart, someone with no history of favoritism toward either side. That someone is humanity. We are here to stop a war, Secretary General, not start one. Drelathi sputtered for a moment, clearly unsure how to respond. The Council had never faced anything like this. Finally, he ended the transmission without another word. Through the window, Kyle watched the human fleet settle into its positions. Each ship knew exactly where to go. They had drilled for this scenario hundreds of times. Now all that practice was paying off. A new voice came over the communication channels. This voice was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every ship in the system. It was Admiral Cynthia Grant speaking calmly but with absolute authority. This is Admiral Cynthia Grant of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We come not as conquerors. We come not as invaders. We come as peacemakers. The conflict between the Vraxian hegemony and the Kelthian Commonwealth ends here. Today, without bloodshed, any military force that attempts to attack will find itself facing the full might of 1,000 human warships. We strongly urge all parties to return to the negotiating table. Earth stands ready to help find a peaceful solution to this dispute. Silence followed her words. Every diplomat, every military officer, every leader watching from their homeworlds waited to see what would happen next. The Vraxian fleet commander was the first to respond. His name was Supreme Marshal Vrakoth. He was a career military officer from a warrior culture. His people believed in strength above all else. His image appeared on every screen. His scaled face showed nothing but contempt and anger. The Vraxian hegemony does not recognize the authority of primitive species to interfere in our affairs. You humans learned to travel between stars only yesterday. You dare to threaten civilizations that ruled the galaxy before your ancestors discovered fire. You have one chance to withdraw. After that, we will show you what real military power looks like. Patricia grabbed Kyle's arm. Her fear was obvious. Around them, the other Earth diplomatic staff looked terrified. They had known about the fleet, but actually facing potential combat was different from planning for it. Kyle took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Either humanity had built something capable of standing against the galaxy's ancient powers, or they had made a terrible mistake that would get thousands of people killed. The sensor displays showed movement. 200 Vraxian warships were breaking away from their main fleet. They were heading directly toward the human defensive sphere. Their weapons were charging up, ready to fire. Kyle whispered a quiet prayer. Then he watched as the battle began. The Vraxian warships came fast. 200 vessels moved in attack formation, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Each ship was 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. The Vraxians had been building warships for centuries. Their technology was proven in countless battles, but the humans had been watching them for 40 years. They had studied every battle the Vraxians fought. They knew every weapon the hegemony used. They understood Vraxian tactics better than most Vraxians did. Admiral Grant's voice came through the fleet channel, calm and controlled. All ships, defensive formation Gamma. Do not fire unless fired upon. Activate all electronic countermeasures. Deploy kinetic barriers. Show them what we can do without killing anyone. The human fleet moved as one. Ships slid into overlapping defensive positions with perfect precision. Every captain knew exactly where to be. Every crew had practiced this maneuver 1,000 times in simulations. Energy shields blazed to life around each ship. But these were not ordinary shields. Human engineers had studied shield technology from 6 different alien civilizations. They had combined the best features of each design and added their own improvements. The result was a defensive system more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen before. At the same time, the human ships began broadcasting on every frequency. Powerful jamming signals swept across space, turning Vraxian targeting computers into useless static. The attackers suddenly found themselves flying blind, unable to lock onto their targets properly. Marshal Vrakoth gave the order to fire anyway. Plasma lances erupted from the Vraxian ships. These weapons were designed to melt through starship armor in seconds. They could boil away a planet's atmosphere. The hegemony had used them to win wars against civilizations that were already old when humans were still living in caves. The plasma struck the human defensive screen and simply vanished. The human shields absorbed the energy completely. Not a single shot got through to hit an actual ship. Kyle watched from the observation window, his heart pounding. Patricia stood beside him, gripping the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. Around them, Earth's diplomatic staff stared at the displays in amazement. The Vraxian fleet fired again and again. Wave after wave of plasma weapons hit the human shields. The energy readings were enormous. Any other fleet would have been destroyed in seconds. The human fleet did not even flinch. Then it was time for the humans to respond. Admiral Grant's next order was precise and clear. All ships target enemy propulsion and weapons systems only. Disable, do not destroy. Fire when ready. The human ships opened fire with railguns. These weapons were simple in concept but devastating in effect. Magnetic coils accelerated chunks of dense metal to incredible speeds. The projectiles hit with the force of small nuclear weapons, but the humans were not aiming to kill. Every shot was carefully calculated. Railgun slugs struck Vraxian engines, shattering drive systems and leaving ships drifting helplessly. Other shots took out weapons arrays, destroying the plasma lances without harming the crew sections. Still more shots disabled shield generators and communication systems. The accuracy was terrifying. Human targeting computers, guided by artificial intelligence systems that had studied millions of battle scenarios, placed every shot exactly where it needed to go. There was no wasted fire, no random shooting, just surgical precision that crippled warships one after another. Within 5 minutes, 20 Vraxian ships were disabled. Within 10 minutes, the count reached 50. The remaining Vraxian attackers began to hesitate. Their confidence was shattered. They had expected an easy victory against a primitive species. Instead, they were being systematically taken apart by an enemy that seemed to know exactly where to hit them. Admiral Grant broadcast again on all channels. Her voice carried no anger, no triumph, just calm determination. Marshal Vrakoth, your crews are alive and unharmed. Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. We could have killed every one of your people. We chose not to. We chose mercy. Stand down now and no one else needs to get hurt. Continue this attack and we will show you that humanity's patience has limits. The moment stretched out. Kyle held his breath. Around the station, every other fleet watched and calculated. The galaxy was learning something new about humanity. They were learning that humans could fight. More importantly, they were learning that humans could show restraint even when they had the upper hand. Marshal Vrakoth's face appeared on the screens again. His expression had changed. The contempt was gone. Now he looked at the humans with the cold calculation of a professional soldier who had just learned his enemy was far more dangerous than expected. The Vraxians were warriors. They respected strength, but they also respected skill and tactical thinking. What the humans had just demonstrated was not just raw power. It was mastery. The hegemony withdraws its attack. We will discuss terms. The remaining Vraxian ships powered down their weapons and fell back to their original positions. The immediate danger was over. In Earth's diplomatic quarters, the tension broke like a dam bursting. Patricia sagged against her console, tears running down her face. Other staff members hugged each other. Some laughed with relief. Others just sat down, overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. Kyle allowed himself one long, shaking breath. They had done it. The plan had worked. Earth's fleet had proven it could stand against the galaxy's military powers. More importantly, they had shown they could win without seeking glory and destruction. But this was just the first step. The real challenge was about to begin. Now they had to turn military victory into diplomatic success. They had to convince the Galactic Council that humanity deserved a permanent voice in galactic affairs. Kyle's communicator buzzed. It was Secretary General Dralathi again. The old diplomat's expression was complicated. He looked shocked, worried, and perhaps a little bit impressed. Ambassador Harrison, the Council is calling an emergency session. You are invited to attend. It appears humanity has finally gotten our attention. Kyle straightened his uniform and took a moment to compose himself. This was what they had been working toward for 40 years. A chance to be heard. A chance to matter. Thank you, Secretary General. I will be there. He turned to Patricia and the rest of his team. Get ready, everyone. We just proved we can fight. Now we need to prove we can lead. The hard part is about to begin. Outside the window, the human fleet maintained its defensive positions. 1,000 warships, standing guard over a peace they had fought to protect. The galaxy would never ignore humanity again. 6 hours later, Kyle Harrison walked through corridors he had never been allowed to enter before. The doors to the main council chamber had been closed to humans for 40 years. Now they opened for him automatically. Guards stepped aside. Alien diplomats who once ignored him now watched him pass with nervous respect. The council chamber was enormous. It was a perfect sphere with floating platforms for each member civilization. Holographic displays showed data from across the galaxy. The ceiling curved above like the dome of a planet. Below, stars glittered in simulated space. A new platform had been constructed for Earth in the hours since the fleet arrived. It floated at the same height as all the others. Not above, not below. Equal. Kyle stepped onto it with Patricia and 3 other members of his team behind him. Around them, representatives from 100 civilizations watched. Some looked angry. Some looked curious. Most looked worried. The galaxy had been stable for centuries. Humans had just shaken that stability to its foundation. Secretary General Dralathi called the emergency session to order. His voice carried through translation systems that let hundreds of different species understand each other. We face 2 critical matters today. First, the dispute between the Vraxian hegemony and the Kelthian Commonwealth that nearly led to war. Second, the arrival of the human fleet and their demand for recognition. Ambassador Harrison, you may speak. Kyle stood. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Everything humanity had worked for over 40 years came down to this moment. He thought of the billions of people on Earth who were counting on him. He thought of the generations who had dreamed of reaching the stars. He began to speak. Secretary General, honored delegates, I stand before you today not to demand anything. I stand here to offer something. For 40 years, humanity has tried to join the galactic community. We sent diplomats. We offered aid. We proposed trade agreements. We asked politely to be included in your discussions. And for 40 years, we were ignored. He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. You ignored us because we were young, because we were inexperienced, because we had nothing you wanted. But we never stopped learning. We never stopped building, and we never stopped believing that working together is better than fighting alone. Kyle activated a holographic display. It showed the 17 star systems that the Vraxians and Kelthians were fighting over. Red markers indicated battle positions. Yellow markers showed disputed colonies. These 17 systems almost caused the biggest war in galactic history. The Vraxians say these systems belong to them by ancient right. They are correct. Their ancestors claimed this territory thousands of years ago. The Kelthians say these systems belong to them because their people have lived there for 3 centuries. They are also correct. Both sides are right. Both sides are also trapped in a conflict where any compromise feels like surrender. The chamber was silent. Every diplomat leaned forward, listening carefully. Earth proposes a solution. Make these systems neutral territory. Create a joint council with representatives from all 3 powers to govern them. The Vraxians keep their historical claim recognized. The Kelthians keep their settlements protected. And humanity provides peacekeeping forces to make sure neither side threatens the other. We have proven we can defend ourselves and others. Let us now prove we can build lasting peace. Immediately, discussions erupted across the chamber. Delegates talked urgently with their home governments. Kyle watched the Vraxian delegation carefully. Marshal Vrakoth sat with his military advisors, their scaled faces unreadable. Across from them, the Kelthian representatives conferred among themselves. After several minutes, Secretary General Dralathi raised his hand for silence. "Your proposal has merit, Ambassador Harrison. But before we address the Vraxian-Kelthian dispute, we must address a more fundamental question. Does humanity deserve a permanent seat on this council? You have proven your military strength, but the Galactic Council was not founded on military power alone. It was founded on wisdom, cooperation, and respect for galactic law." An ancient voice spoke. It belonged to Ambassador Krell of the Vrel Consensus. The Vrel were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They had been exploring space for 10,000 years. When Krell spoke, everyone listened. "I have lived for over 3,000 years. I have seen many young species demand recognition from this council. Most wanted power for its own sake. They wanted to conquer, to dominate, to force others to obey them. The humans are different." The ancient alien floated his platform closer to Kyle's. "They built a fleet capable of conquering half the galaxy. But they did not come here to conquer. They came to stop a war. When they fought the Vraxian attack force, they disabled the ships without destroying them. They saved lives when they could have taken them. They showed mercy when they had every reason to show none. In all my long existence, I have rarely seen such restraint combined with such capability." Krell turned to face the entire chamber. "Ambassador Harrison, your species was ignored because we did not know you. But we see you now. We see your strength. More importantly, we see your wisdom. You understand that real power is not about forcing others to obey. It is about protecting those who need protection." The Vrel Consensus votes to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council. That opened the floodgates. Other civilizations began announcing their votes. The Kelthians voted yes, grateful that war had been avoided. Smaller civilizations who feared being caught between larger powers voted yes, seeing humans as potential protectors. Even some who had initially been hostile began to reconsider. The Vraxians were the last to vote. Marshal Vrakoth stood on his platform, his expression stern. The chamber fell silent, waiting for his words. "The Vraxian hegemony respects strength. We respect skill in battle. The humans have demonstrated both. They defeated our forces without unnecessary killing. They showed the discipline of true warriors. More importantly, they offer a solution to our conflict with the Kelthians that allows both sides to preserve their honor." Vrakoth paused, then gave a slight bow toward Kyle. "The hegemony votes to accept humanity into the council. We also accept their proposal for joint administration of the disputed sectors." The vote was counted. Not everyone agreed. Some civilizations walked out in protest. Others abstained, wanting to wait and see what humanity would do with their new power. But when the final tally was complete, the result was clear. Humanity had won its seat at the table. As the session ended, Kyle found himself surrounded by diplomats from dozens of species. Everyone wanted to establish relationships with this new power. Messages flooded in from governments requesting meetings, proposing trade deals, asking for security consultations. Patricia stood beside him, reading through the incoming communications with wide eyes. "Ambassador, we have meeting requests from 47 different civilizations, trade proposals from 32 more. And the Kelthians want to discuss the details of the Joint Council immediately." Kyle nodded, but his attention was on the holographic map still showing the disputed sectors. They had forced their way to the table with 1,000 warships. Now came the harder part. They had to prove they deserved to stay. They had to show the galaxy that humanity could build, not just threaten. The real work was just beginning. 3 months passed. Kyle Harrison stood in what used to be empty space at the heart of the disputed sectors. Now a massive construction project filled his view. Unity Station was growing larger every day. The station was a joint project between Earth, the Vraxian hegemony, and the Kelthian Commonwealth. 3 former enemies working together to build something new. Construction crews from all 3 civilizations worked side by side. Human engineers collaborated with Vraxian technicians. Kelthian architects shared their designs with both groups. It was messy. There were language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and occasional arguments about the best way to do things. But it was working. Admiral Cynthia Grant joined Kyle at the observation window. Her uniform now carried new insignia, marking her as Supreme Commander of the United Peacekeeping Force. The human fleet had been joined by volunteers from 28 different civilizations. Ships from species that had never worked together before now served under a unified command. 3 months ago, I was planning for war. Now I spend my days training Vraxian pilots on human defensive tactics and learning Kelthian combat strategies. Yesterday I had lunch with Marshal Vrakoth. Can you believe that? The same alien who tried to destroy our fleet is now teaching my officers about hegemony military history. Kyle smiled slightly. It was strange how quickly enemies could become partners when they had a common purpose. Does it bother you that we had to show up with 1,000 warships to be taken seriously? That 40 years of peaceful diplomacy did nothing, but one display of military force changed everything? Grant thought about that for a moment, every single day. But then I remind myself what we did after we got their attention. We could have destroyed that Vraxian attack force completely. We disabled them instead. We could have demanded territory or resources as payment for our help. We asked for nothing except a seat at the table and a chance to keep the peace. The galaxy respects us not just because we are strong, but because we show restraint. Patricia appeared with her ever-present tablet. She had been promoted to deputy ambassador after the summit. The workload had increased dramatically, but she handled it with the same dedication she had always shown. Ambassador, the Kelthian minister is here for your meeting about the joint governance structure. Also, Secretary General Dralathi sent a message. 3 more civilizations want to join the peacekeeping initiative. We are going to need additional ships and personnel. Grant laughed. Tell Earth's shipyards to start another shift. At this rate, we will have a fleet of 5,000 ships within a year. As Kyle turned to go to his meeting, he noticed something that made him pause. Down on the construction deck, visible through the transparent sections of the station, a young Vraxian technician was working alongside a human engineer. They were arguing animatedly about something, their hands gesturing at a power conduit that needed to be installed. 3 months ago, those two would have been shooting at each other. Now they were colleagues trying to solve a technical problem together. That evening, Kyle attended the first formal council meeting held at Unity Station. The chamber was smaller than the one at the main council station, but it served the same purpose. Representatives from Earth, the Vraxian hegemony, and the Kelthian Commonwealth sat at a circular table. No one was positioned above anyone else. They were equals. The meeting covered practical matters, trade regulations for the joint sectors, security protocols for the peacekeeping forces, immigration policies for civilians who wanted to move between systems. It was boring, detailed work. But this boring work was what actually built peace. Marshal Vrakoth surprised Kyle by suggesting that human mediation techniques be adopted for dispute resolution. The Kelthian representative agreed, noting that humanity's neutral status made them ideal mediators. After the meeting, Kyle found himself alone with Vrakoth for a moment. The Vraxian commander studied him with sharp eyes. Ambassador Harrison, I must admit something. When your fleet first arrived, I was angry. I felt insulted that a primitive species dared to interfere in hegemony affairs. I attacked your ships expecting an easy victory. Kyle waited, unsure where this was going. You taught me an important lesson that day. Power without wisdom is just destruction, but power combined with mercy, with the genuine desire to protect rather than conquer, that is something rare in this galaxy. The hegemony has been a military power for thousands of years, but we have not always used that power wisely. Perhaps we can learn from your example. The Vraxian gave a formal bow, a sign of deep respect in his culture, and left. Kyle stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. A proud warrior from a civilization 10,000 years older than humanity had just acknowledged that humans had something to teach them. Later that night, Kyle was back at the observation window. It had become his favorite spot for thinking. Admiral Grant joined him again, bringing 2 cups of coffee, an earth drink that was starting to become popular among other species. The Kelthian ambassador told me today that more civilians are moving to the joint sectors, humans, Vraxians, and Kelthians living in the same communities. Can you imagine that 6 months ago? Kyle shook his head. 6 months ago, these 3 groups were preparing to kill each other. Do you think it will last? This peace we have built? It was the same question Grant had asked before, but now Kyle had a better answer. Nothing lasts forever. Someday there will be new conflicts, new challenges. But I think we have given peace a real chance. We showed the galaxy that military strength does not require cruelty. That being powerful does not mean being a bully. And maybe, just maybe, we reminded everyone that cooperation works better than conflict. Grant smiled and raised her coffee cup in a small toast. We missed every galactic summit for 40 years, but we certainly made an entrance at the one that mattered most. That we did, Admiral. That we did. Outside the window, human warships patrolled alongside vessels from 24 other species. The fleet was no longer just Earth's military force. It had become a true peacekeeping coalition, protecting the stability that they had fought so hard to create. Beyond the ships, the stars shone as they always had. But something fundamental had changed among them. A young species had learned to walk with giants, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of refusing to be invisible any longer. Earth had missed every galactic summit for 40 years. But now they would never miss another one. Now humanity had earned its place among the stars, and the galaxy was better for it. 1 year after the summit, Kyle Harrison walked through the completed Unity station. The construction was finally finished. What had started as an empty point in space was now a thriving center of cooperation and commerce. Thousands of beings from dozens of species lived and worked here. The station had become a symbol of what was possible when former enemies chose partnership over conflict. The main plaza bustled with activity. Human merchants sold goods next to Vraxian traders. Kelthian families walked past restaurants serving food from 20 different worlds. Children of various species played together in the recreation areas, their parents watching from nearby benches. This was what peace looked like. Not grand diplomatic ceremonies or formal treaties, just ordinary people living ordinary lives together. Kyle made his way to the central council chamber where today's anniversary celebration would take place. 1 year ago, humanity had forced its way to the galactic table with 1,000 warships. Today they were hosting a gathering of friends and allies. Patricia met him at the entrance, looking pleased. "Ambassador, we have a full house. Representatives from 87 civilizations are here. Secretary General Dralathi arrived an hour ago. Even some of the civilizations that initially opposed our membership have sent observers. They want to see what we have built here." Kyle nodded. The year had been challenging. There had been setbacks, arguments, and moments when it seemed like the whole project might fall apart. But they had persevered. Earth, the Vraxians, and the Kelthians had proven that cooperation could work even between very different cultures. The ceremony began with speeches from all three founding powers. The Kelthian representative spoke about how the joint governance model had allowed their people to keep their homes while ending the threat of war. Marshal Vrakoth, representing the hegemony, acknowledged that the arrangement had preserved Vraxian honor while creating new opportunities for trade and cultural exchange. When Kyle's turn came, he stood before the assembled delegates and thought carefully about what to say. 1 year ago, humanity arrived at a galactic summit uninvited. We brought weapons we hoped never to use. We made demands we had no traditional right to make. Looking back, I understand why so many of you were angry. We disrupted centuries of diplomatic tradition. We forced change on a system that had worked more or less for thousands of years. He paused, looking around at the faces watching him. Some alien, some human, all listening intently. But I want you to understand something about humanity. We did not build those ships because we wanted to conquer anyone. We built them because we were terrified. Terrified of being helpless in a galaxy we did not understand. Terrified of watching terrible things happen and being unable to stop them. We built power not to dominate others, but to protect ourselves and anyone else who might need it. Kyle gestured to the windows showing the diverse population of Unity Station. This station proves something important. It proves that having power means having responsibility. The greatest responsibility is to use that power for more than just yourself. A year ago, we had the capability to destroy the Vraxian attack force. We chose to disable their ships instead. We had the strength to demand territory or resources. We asked only for the chance to help build peace. Secretary General Dralathi stood and approached Kyle. The ancient diplomat had been skeptical of humanity at first. Now his expression showed genuine respect. "Ambassador Harrison, the Galactic Council has watched your species carefully this past year. We have seen how you handle power. We have seen how you treat those weaker than yourselves. We have seen your commitment to the principles you spoke of when you first demanded our attention." Dralathi pulled out a formal document, its surface glowing with holographic seals from 100 civilizations. The Council has voted unanimously to expand the peacekeeping initiative. We are asking Earth to lead a new galactic security force, not to conquer or police others, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to stand between those who would fight, to show other young species that strength and wisdom can exist together. Kyle felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. This was more than just recognition. This was trust. The galaxy was trusting humanity with significant power and asking them to use it wisely. We accept, Secretary General, and we promise to honor that trust. The celebration continued late into the station's night cycle. Kyle found himself surrounded by diplomats who wanted to discuss future projects, military officers planning joint training exercises, and civilians who simply wanted to thank Earth for helping to keep the peace. Late in the evening, Kyle returned to his favorite observation window. The view never got old. Ships from across the galaxy moved in orderly patterns. The Joint Fleet patrolled peacefully. Construction ships worked on expanding the station even further. Everything spoke of growth, cooperation, and hope for the future. Admiral Grant joined him one last time. She carried 2 glasses and a bottle of actual champagne from Earth, saved for special occasions. I heard about the Council's offer. Leading a galactic security force is a big responsibility. Are we ready for that? Kyle accepted the glass she offered. I don't know if we are ready, but I know we will try our best. That is all we can do. Try our best and hope it is enough. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. You know what I think about sometimes? Grant said quietly. I think about all those diplomatic messages Earth sent for 40 years. All those requests for meetings that went ignored. All those offers of friendship that were rejected. Part of me is still angry about that. Me too. But maybe it worked out the way it needed to. If the galaxy had accepted us immediately, we might have become comfortable. We might not have built the fleet. We might not have developed the strength to actually make a difference when it mattered most. So being ignored made us stronger? Being ignored taught us that we had to earn respect. Not just by being friendly, but by being capable. By being strong enough that we could not be dismissed, but wise enough that we did not need to prove it through violence. Grant raised her glass. To humanity, then. We missed every summit for 40 years, but when we finally arrived, we changed everything. Kyle touched his glass to hers. To humanity, and to all the species willing to give us a chance to prove what we can be. They drank together. 2 humans who had helped guide their species from obscurity to galactic importance. It had been a long journey, but it was only the beginning. Beyond the window, a new ship jumped into the system. It bore the markings of a civilization from the far side of the galaxy, one of the species that had initially opposed human membership. But now they were here, seeking to join the peacekeeping initiative, seeking to be part of what humanity was building. The galaxy was vast. There would always be new challenges, new conflicts, new problems to solve. But Earth was no longer facing those challenges alone. They had proven themselves. They had earned their place. 40 years ago, humans had looked at the stars and wondered if they would ever be accepted by the civilizations they found there. 40 years of trying, of hoping, of being rejected. Then came one day, one moment when everything changed, when 1,000 warships arrived at a galactic summit and demanded to be heard, not with threats but with the promise of protection. Not with violence, but with the offer of peace. Earth had missed every galactic summit until that day. But now they would help lead them. Now humanity had come home to the stars, not as conquerors or supplicants, but as partners and protectors.